In the sky above the desert, former military pilot Alex Vega, known by her call sign, Wildcard, comes face to face with shadows of the past. Mysterious aircraft with no markings and pilots who were supposed to be dead. When an old comrade, long presumed lost, makes contact, she realizes their unit, Zulu-Echo, didn't vanish. It's preparing for a new, unofficial war. Alex finds herself torn between loyalty to her former squad and responsibility to the world she lives in now. Welcome to my channel. They say you don't know who someone is until they speak under pressure. But I've learned something else up there in the clouds. Sometimes, you don't know who someone was until you hear them on the radio. My name's Alex Vega, 38 years old, ex-Air Force, daughter of a crop duster turned combat ace. I live in Marfa, Texas now, tucked between forgotten hills and an airstrip that doesn't even show up on half the maps. It's just me, my hangar, and a jet black Aero 29 Delphin I rebuilt from scrap and rust. Most folks around here think it's just some old bird for hobby flights. But when you've logged 12 years flying Black Ops out of Aviano and another 4 as a combat instructor, hobby takes on a different meaning. That morning, I was cruising at 31,000 feet, slicing through New Mexico air as clean and cold as memory itself. No music, no chatter. Just the quiet rumble of the engine and the sky stretched out like an empty journal. I was headed to Santa Fe for a systems test, or that's what I told the FAA. In truth, I was chasing a question I couldn't shake loose. Why had a restricted corridor suddenly lit up hot near Los Alamos? And why were the usual channels whispering about unlogged activity? I hadn't planned on trespassing. But sometimes, the air just pulls you. I was somewhere over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains when the warning light blinked red, military intercept incoming. I looked down at my map. Same route I'd filed with the tower, same clearance. But then I saw it, a new buffer zone drawn around airspace that hadn't been restricted when I lifted off. Classic, I muttered, flipping through backup comms. Government had a habit of adjusting boundaries faster than civilian air charts could keep up, especially near old labs and new secrets. Then came the voice. Unregistered jet at 30,000 feet. This is Sentinel-2 of the U.S. Air Force. You are in a restricted zone. Identify yourself or prepare to be escorted. The voice was young, clipped, confident. I could picture the guy, probably 27, buzz cut, flying an F-22 and thinking he was untouchable. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I looked left, and there he was, sleek gray fuselage gliding up beside me, his visor aimed straight at my cockpit. 2 more were flanking wide, holding pattern. Raptors. Gorgeous machines. But what caught my attention was the formation, tight, textbook intercept posture. They weren't playing. Last chance, civilian jet. The lead called again. Identify or descend immediately. I had to smile. Because what he didn't know was that the person he was tailing had flown maneuvers before he ever touched a stick. That the insignia on my port wing, faded but visible, once belonged to a unit that didn't officially exist. And that unit still carried weight. I flicked the comms live. My voice steady. Calm. The way you speak when you've been here before. This is Captain Vega. Call sign Wildcard. Requesting clarification on restricted coordinates. Your corridor was not active when my flight plan was approved. Radio silence. Total. Flat. Not a beep. I glanced at my altimeter. Still holding. I could hear it, though, not the wind, not the engine, the moment of recognition on their end. The quiet stretch when 3 fighter pilots process a call sign they never expected to hear. Then the tension cracked. Wildcard, one of them said, soft, uncertain, as in, the ghost run? Captain Alex Vega? Now that made me lean back. Yeah, the ghost run. A mission that wasn't a mission. An operation we weren't supposed to survive. 12 jets went in. 2 came out. I was one of them. The others buried in Arlington. Before I could answer, their control frequency chimed in. A deeper voice now. Someone higher up. All intercept units, disengage. Repeat. Disengage and maintain distance. Confirmed ID on Wildcard. Escort formation only. The lead Raptor shifted formation, not to intimidate, but to follow. Like an honor guard. I exhaled slowly. Up here, you earned your name. Not with medals. Not with stories. With silence. With how the sky reacts when you speak. And today? The sky remembered me. The Raptors gave me space after that. No more threats. No more demands. Just steady wings on either side, tracking every move I made like I was something between royalty and classified. And maybe in their eyes, I was both. They were younger, all of them. You could hear it in the cadence of their voices, the way they handled protocol like a checklist rather than instinct. But I wasn't mad. Hell, I remembered being that young too. Back when the jet felt like an extension of your ego instead of your memory. I dipped the L-29 slightly to catch the sun over the Sangre peaks. The light spilled golden over my dash, painting my fingers in warm color as I adjusted the trim. I didn't need to check my 6. The Raptors were holding formation like a chapel choir. Then came the private channel ping. Wildcard, this is Sentinel-2. Mind if I ask, is it true? What they say about Ghost Run? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how to. You see, the truth about legends is that they're always half smoke. Ghost Run was no exception. 12 aircraft flew into Syrian airspace during a blackout in 2009, during what the Pentagon called an unauthorized engagement window. We were supposed to paint radar for an incoming drone op, easy in, easy out. Except it wasn't. Intel missed a launch window by 2 minutes. The enemy didn't. They scrambled interceptors from 3 different bases. We were flying a diamond formation, and within 60 seconds, it was chaos. The radio went black. ECM lit up like Christmas. We were outnumbered and completely isolated. And somewhere in that storm, I found something I didn't know I had. You ever fly so long your aircraft starts answering questions before you ask them? I finally replied. That's what Ghost Run was. It wasn't about surviving. It was about making them think we were 10 jets, not 2. Smoke, angles, and decoys. I heard a whistle through the comms. They say you tricked 5 enemy fighters into chasing shadows. I smiled. Only 5. He laughed. Genuine, almost boyish. Damn. So it's all true. No, I said, eyes narrowing on the horizon. It's worse. Most of what they don't say is the part worth remembering. The channel went quiet again, but I knew he was still listening. I could feel it in the way his Raptor kept a respectful 5-degree offset from my left wing. Then a new voice came on. A woman. Calm, precise. Wildcard, this is Sentinel-3. I have to ask, why the L-29? You could have picked anything. Good question. Because she doesn't lie to me, I answered. No AI. No glass. Just gauges and guts. And when things go sideways, that's who I trust. Silence. Then, respect. That single word meant more than a medal. I banked slightly southeast, heading toward the edge of the zone. The Raptors followed without question. Escort now. Guardians of a relic who still knew how to dance with the sky. Then control cut back in. Wildcard, be advised. Satellite confirms an unauthorized aircraft approaching from Sector Juliet 2. Fast mover. No transponder. We're attempting intercept. I tightened my grip on the stick. Type. Unknown. Possibly a Mirage retrofit. Could be civilian. Could be Merc. That ticked something in my brain. I'd heard chatter a few days ago. Encrypted comms bouncing off old towers in New Mexico. Someone was probing corridors, testing patterns. It felt like recon, but sloppy. Whoever they weren't flying like rookies. Control, I can get visual in 5. Sending course correction. Negative, Wildcard. You are not cleared for intercept. I keyed the mic again. I wasn't asking. Another long pause. Roger. Proceed at your discretion. Sentinel flight will trail support. And just like that, it was on again. I adjusted course, the Delphin humming as I dropped altitude. Somewhere below, near the edge of a canyon, was a contact that didn't belong, and I was going to see them for myself. As I angled toward the new sector, Sentinel-2 came back on the private line. Ma'am, he said, and the tone had changed now. No more arrogance, just respect. Whatever's down there, we've got your back. Appreciate it, I said. But don't blink. Things get real fast when ghosts come calling. The cloud layer thinned as we pushed through the edge of Juliet 2, and the radio buzzed with static. Something was coming. Something the modern birds couldn't see. But me? I was born in the dark. And I was about to remind the sky that some pilots never stop flying the mission. I dropped through 24,000 feet like a feather made of iron, the Delphin riding smooth against the thin air. Below me, jagged ridgelines stitched across the terrain like scars, harsh, unapologetic, like this part of New Mexico itself. They called it the Forgotten Band. Too remote for tourists, too stubborn for developers. But pilots knew it. Some as a shortcut, some as a graveyard. And right now, it was the backdrop for a chase I didn't understand yet. Control, this is Wildcard, I said calmly. Approaching Juliet 2-090 vector. Still no visual on target. Roger, wildcard. Last ping showed contact at 20,000, heading north-northwest. Transponder dark. Maintain course. Copy. I flicked one of the older toggles on my dash, activating my legacy radar, a Cold War relic I'd rigged to bypass modern jamming. It gave me a hazy picture at best, but sometimes that's all you need. One blip appeared. Then two. Close together, flying as tight as ghosts in a waltz. But only one had been reported. That's when it clicked. Someone was shadowing the primary. Close enough to blend radar signatures. That wasn't amateur work. That was military doctrine, the kind you don't pick up off YouTube or flight sims. I switched to Sentinel's private frequency. Sentinel 2, be advised. I'm reading dual heat blooms off the lead target. Looks like a buddy flight using radar overlay tactics. You seeing this? There was a pause, then a frustrated reply. Negative, wildcard. Our scopes show one. Because they want you to see one. This is old-school shadow work, Gulf-era tactics, flipped for stealth. Another silence. Then Sentinel 3 cut in. Holy hell. You're right. One of them's flying half under the other's radar cone. Barely off vertical. That's not civilian. Not even close, I said. Get ready. I pitched hard left and dipped beneath the thermal layer, where heat distortion makes digital tracking about as useful as a pocket knife in a gunfight. The Delphin held her own. Tight airframe. No computers to get confused. Just me and the ghost I was chasing. Then I saw it, a flicker against the mountain backdrop. Jet black body. No markings. Nose sharp like a scalpel. The kind of silhouette you don't forget, even if the government pretends it doesn't exist. Contact visual, I radioed. Unmarked. Low-sig airframe. Possible stealth runner. Confirming two-ship flight. Trailing bird is masking under lead. The Raptors came screaming past me seconds later, slicing a contrail so clean it looked drawn by compass. But they overshot, couldn't turn tight enough in this canyon dance. The black jets banked in opposite directions, splitting formation like water molecules under pressure. They weren't running anymore. They were testing. Wildcard, we're losing lock. Sentinel 2 shouted. They're dropping chaff in layers we can't track. Of course they are, I muttered. Then something happened I hadn't felt in years. Instinct kicked in so hard it was almost physical. I stopped looking at instruments and started flying by feel. I rolled the Delphin belly up, used the sun to blind the trailing jet's canopy, and slid into their shadow. They didn't expect a relic to pull a maneuver like that. But I didn't play by modern rules. I didn't have rules. Just skills. I got close enough to read the undercarriage numbers, half-scratched serials. But the font? Government issue. The kind reserved for contractors with blank badges and no last names. I snapped a few photos through my canopy scope and pulled out fast, letting the Raptors re-engage now that the split formation was over. Control, I've got photographic confirmation of 2 unauthorized stealth aircraft, running military identifiers. Recommend full escalation of security protocols. Wildcard, copies all, said Control, but their voice was tight now. We're forwarding to National Command. Good, I replied. Because whoever those two are, they're not just flying through restricted airspace. They're studying ours. A new voice came on the line, deeper, older, measured. Wildcard, this is Command West. Stand down and return to holding altitude. Your presence is now part of an active investigation. I laughed once, bitter and sharp. I've been part of investigations, usually after the bodies hit the ground. If you want this to end clean, you better let me finish the job. There was no reply. But no one stopped me either. I climbed back up to 27,000 feet, my Delphin panting a little, like she'd just run a marathon barefoot. She held together. She always did. Sentinel 2 drifted closer, this time respectfully off my starboard wing. His visor tilted toward me, a silent nod of acknowledgement. Wildcard, he said over the open channel, if you ever run a class on how to make modern jets look like fools, let me know. I'll bring a notepad. I smirked. Notebooks are for school. This is flying. He chuckled. Understood, ma'am. But I wasn't smiling anymore. Because I had seen what was behind those jets, not just machines, but training. Training that belonged to people I used to serve with. People who were supposed to be dead, or off the grid. Something was coming. And I was starting to realize I wasn't chasing ghosts. I was being led to them. I touched down at Holloman Auxiliary Field just after 1,700 hours, escorted in by the same Raptors who'd tried to shoot me down 2 hours earlier. Funny how the sky shifts alliances faster than politicians change speeches. They cleared the tarmac for me. No questions. No salute. Just silence. The kind you only get when no one wants to be the first to speak. Like everyone knows something's off, but they're too low on the ladder to say it out loud. As I powered down the Delphin, I noticed a man waiting just beyond the perimeter. Civilian suit. Tactical stance. I clocked him before I even unclipped my harness. He didn't wave. Didn't move. Just stood there like a rusted weather vane watching the wind shift. By the time I stepped off the wing, he was already walking toward me. Captain Vega, he said. Not a question. His badge flashed like it had its own clearance level. Depends who's asking. Martin Rowan. Homeland Strategic Division. I need a word. I gave him a nod toward the hangar. Then you better start walking. Inside, the air was stale and cold, the kind of place that's been cleaned too many times and still smells like secrets. Rowan handed me a water bottle and a printed still frame from the photo I'd taken mid-flight. Black jet. Markings blurred. Tail code just barely visible. X5-119. I felt my stomach flip. Where'd you get this? I asked. You tell me, he countered. I got it above Juliet too. Chasing ghosts through radar clutter. Same ones your people can't track with billion-dollar toys. Rowan didn't blink. You realize that aircraft shouldn't exist. That makes two of us. He tossed another photo onto the table. This one? It punched harder. A face. Tan. Scarred. Smile twisted slightly on one side like it had been sewn together after a blast. I knew that face. Major Theo Durant. My wingman on Ghost Run. Impossible, I said quietly. Theo died over Damascus. Ejection failure. Rowan leaned forward. Are you sure? His jet went down. We saw it. No shoot. The explosion. Recovered nothing but engine fragments and a partial wing. Rowan interrupted. The body was never confirmed. I stared at the photo again. It was recent. Within the last month. Durant, or whoever wore his face, was standing near a stealth platform on a desert tarmac, had half turned toward the camera like he knew he was being watched. That wasn't survival. That was defiance. I took a deep breath. What is this? We think Durant was taken or recruited. Hard to say. Could have been one of ours flipped deep cover. Or something worse. What's worse than betrayal? Belief, Rowan said. That word made the hair on my arms rise. Rowan tapped a manila folder beside him. We've been tracking an initiative called Project Reunion. Off books. Post-retirement acquisition. They're collecting former spec aviators, the kinds with non-standard kill ratios and a taste for off-the-record missions. Ghosts. He nodded. Exactly. They're using them to test legacy warfare against modern surveillance. Think, Cold War tactics upgraded with stolen tech. None of the constraints. All of the chaos. And the jets I chased today? Prototypes, Rowan said. Hybrid stealth runners. Think Mirage body with Raptor internals. Untrackable if flown right. And only someone like Durant could fly them that well. I sat back in my chair. For years, I thought I was the last voice of an era that never made it into the textbooks. Turns out, the echoes never stopped. They just changed direction. What do you need from me? I asked. Rowan smiled faintly. Not the warm kind. The kind of smile you see on someone who's already written the next page and is just waiting for you to catch up. We need you to fly again. I am flying. Not like this. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, a map. A grid over Nevada and Utah. A corridor marked Sierra Zero Alpha. And circled in red was something called Echo Yard. Unofficial test range. Unmapped. Been dead since the late 90s. But we've seen recent activity. Comms flaring. Old tech getting dusted off. I traced the route with my finger. You want me to fly into it? We want you to flush them out. Make them show their teeth. They already know you're alive. They saw your tail number. They'll want to see what else you remember. And when they do, you improvise. That's what you're famous for, isn't it? I closed the folder and looked him dead in the eyes. You're asking me to walk into a place where ghosts train traders. Alone. Rowan leaned in. Not alone. Just first. He stood and left without another word. I stared at the folder for a long time after he left. Not because I doubted the danger. I didn't. I just wasn't sure if I was chasing a former ally. Or a mirror of myself. Either way, I was going in. Because someone had to remind them the sky remembers everything, especially the ones who think it's forgotten them. I didn't sleep that night. The hangar lights flickered too much. My thoughts flickered more. I sat beside my L-29, legs stretched out, back against the cold steel of her landing gear. I ran my fingers along the paint, black on black, matte like a shadow, and let the silence settle. I hadn't heard from Theo Durant in 16 years. Not a call. Not a rumor. Just a line in a memorial and a folded flag I helped deliver. Now I was supposed to believe he'd faked a death I watched from a mile away? Or worse, that he'd been reborn for a war none of us were supposed to fight again? I didn't know what was waiting inside Echo Yard. But I knew how ghosts operated. And I knew my old squadron, or what was left of it, never did anything without a reason. By 0500, I was pre-flighting the Delphin in full gear. No call sign stenciled. No transponder. Just a hull number scratched into history and a cockpit that only trusted muscle memory. I slid into the seat like it was made for me, because it was. Every inch of that aircraft had been rebuilt by my own hands. And if I was going to go ghost hunting, I'd rather do it in a plane that didn't need permission to survive. I radioed in on the old band, the one we used before satellites got greedy. This is Wildcard. Launching Blackbird flight. No payload. Sierra Zero Alpha Corridor. Comms blackout begins in 5. Rowan's voice came back, already faded by protocol. Good hunting, Captain. Don't wish me luck, I muttered. Just clear my path. And with that, I roared off the runway like a whispered threat. The Delphin screamed through the air, skimming across the desert toward a zone that hadn't existed on any chart since 1997. That was when Echo Yard officially shut down, or so we were told. But you could always smell it in the sky. The burn of old secrets never really fades. By the time I hit the edge of the Sierra Zero Alpha Corridor, my instruments had already started to blink. GPS scrambled. Comms spotty. It wasn't enemy jamming. It was ours. Which meant someone knew I was coming. I dropped to nap of the Earth flying 300 feet AGL, following the folds of the terrain like I was being stitched into the desert itself. The Delphin purred. She liked low-altitude runs. Always had. That's when I saw it. First, a flicker on my passive radar. Not a ping, a shadow. Something big, moving slow, right at the threshold of detection. Then a glint, sunlight off metal. Straight ahead, tucked into a canyon that used to hold old drone platforms. And behind it? A hangar I remembered from the maps they made us burn. I banked left, coming in wide, trying to scan the structure without alerting whoever was watching. But I was already too late. They knew. The voice came through my headset like it was sitting in the seat beside me. Wildcard, it said. I was wondering how long it'd take. I froze. The tone was lower than I remembered, rough around the edges. But it was his. Theo Durant. Alive. I pulled the Delphin up, circling above the dry basin like a bird of prey unsure whether to strike. Theo, I said, the name unfamiliar on my tongue after so many years. A pause. I go by Parallax now, he replied. But yeah, it's me. I didn't answer. I just let the static stretch between us like a question neither of us had the guts to ask. Why? I finally said. I could ask you the same, he replied. Why come looking now? After all this time. I glanced at the photo still clipped to my dash. The one Rowan gave me. You were dead. I was forgotten, he said. Big difference. The tone in his voice, calm, composed, but carrying weight, reminded me of those last few months before Ghost Run. Theo had grown distant. Not colder, just quieter. Like he was already flying in another theater none of us could see. You flipped? I asked bluntly. He laughed, not cruel, just tired. No. I evolved. I saw what they were building. What they wanted from us. Thought I beat them to it. I looped the Delphin around again, trying to keep line of sight on the hangar. I could see movement now. Figures on the ground. At least 3. Not in uniform, but moving like they'd worn one before. They're building something out here, I said. What is it? Theo's voice shifted. Not aggressive, but guarded. An alternative. To what? To the world that erased us. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. They didn't erase us, Theo. They retired us. He snapped back. Retired? That what they call it now? You remember what happened to the others? Silva? Kinney? What about Kravitz? Vanished. One by one. Told their tech was obsolete. Told they were obsolete. I remembered. I hadn't wanted to. We gave them everything, he said, his voice quiet now. And when we stopped being useful, they buried us under metals and moved on. I'm not interested in revenge, Alex. I'm interested in relevance. And out here? We're rewriting the rules. I banked hard, descending through the canyon to get one last look before the signal cut again. A second hangar. Another black jet. Newer. Smaller. Sleeker. A testbed. He was telling the truth. They weren't fighting a war. They were preparing for one. Come in, Theo said, like he was inviting me to dinner instead of a black site. You've still got instincts. You still know how to fly. Why waste it reporting to people who don't even know your name anymore? I hovered there, just outside the ridge line, the sky pressing down on me like a question with no right answer. Because somebody still needs to remember who we were, I said softly. And then I pulled away. Fast. Hard. Climbing out of the basin like a bat out of 1995. Theo didn't try to follow. He didn't have to. He knew I'd be back. Not because he expected me to switch sides, but because some debts don't cancel out with distance. And I had one more thing to figure out before this was over. Was I chasing a friend-turned-enemy? Or a future I wasn't ready to admit I understood? Back at base, I told Rowan everything. Not all of it, just the parts that mattered. Echo Yard was active. Durant was alive. And he wasn't working alone. Rowan stared at me like someone trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces glued to the table. He tried to recruit you? He didn't have to, I said. He thinks I already belong. Rowan frowned. Do you? No, I said. But I get it. And that's what scares me. I was halfway through scrubbing down my flight logs when the next shoe dropped. A knock on the hangar door. A junior tech with eyes too wide and voice too stiff. Ma'am, command wants you in ops. Priority. I followed him down the corridor. That's where they showed me the footage. Night vision. Drone surveillance. Multiple aircraft departing Echo Yard hours after I left. Same profiles. Same radar signature gaps. But one thing was different. They weren't heading west. They were heading east. Toward populated airspace. Recon run. I asked. Rowan shook his head. No. Statement. I leaned in closer, spotting something painted faintly on the tail of one of the stealth aircraft. It wasn't a number this time. It was a symbol. A broken compass. I felt my stomach drop. That symbol had once belonged to our disbanded unit. Squadron Zulu-Echo. It was never meant to fly again. And now it was back. Without colors, without a flag, just a warning. Rowan looked at me. This is your past. We can't intercept what we don't understand. I nodded slowly. They're not attacking yet, I said. They're daring us to ask the wrong question. Rowan leaned forward. So what do we do? I met his eyes. We ask it anyway. 2 nights later, I was back in the air. No escort. No clearance. Just me and the Delphin, flying a route that wasn't logged and didn't exist. Rowan hadn't said it directly, but the message was clear. If anyone could get ahead of the break, it was me. Not with weapons, but with memory. I traced the old training corridor that once belonged to Zulu-Echo. Terrain masking, tight turns, no digital trace. It was muscle memory, the kind only born from repetition and danger. Halfway through Sector 5, I saw it. 3 jets, flying high and wide, just enough to stay visible. They wanted to be seen. I climbed above them, pushing the Delphin harder than usual. No reaction. But when I banked right to break contact, one of them peeled off and followed. Just one. Theo. His voice came through the open frequency, smooth as glass. Had a feeling you'd come back. I'm not here to join you. I know, he said. You're here to remember what we were. I said nothing. He continued. They're watching you, Alex. Command. Rowan. The brass behind the curtain. They don't trust you anymore. You've been up here too long. You think like us. He wasn't wrong. That's what made it dangerous. I dropped altitude fast. Theo didn't follow. Before I lost signal, he left me with one last message. They don't need a war. Just the fear of one. And we're the spark. His silhouette vanished into the dark. And I suddenly realized. This wasn't just a rogue unit. It was a test. Not of firepower, but of loyalty. I landed at dusk. Marfa's strip looked lonelier than usual, like the dirt knew something I didn't. I didn't even bother to shut down the Delphin fully before Rowan's voice hit my comms. We've got a problem. What kind? I asked, already climbing out. Durant's squadron crossed into commercial airspace. 15 seconds. No weapons, no message. Just visibility. They're baiting the news cycle, I said. Testing the public radar. Worse, Rowan replied. They're testing us. Back inside ops, tension choked the room. On the main screen, footage from NORAD. Durant's aircraft hovered like a phantom just outside a passenger flight path near Albuquerque. No engagement. No harm. But the implication was loud. They're ghosts with teeth, someone muttered. No, I corrected. They're ghosts with mirrors. Rowan nodded slowly. This is going to escalate. It already has, I said. They want us to react with force, so they can say we fired the first shot. I saw a folder in Rowan's hands. He handed it to me. Directive just came through. They want you to lead an intercept next time Durant's team shows up. And then what? You're not authorized to fire. That got a dry laugh out of me. So I fly into a storm and just wave? No, Rowan said. You fly in so they know we remember who they are. And that you're not afraid. I closed the folder, jaw tight. They won't break formation next time, I said. I know. I looked back toward the tarmac. My plane sat there like a loaded question. Next time, the sky wouldn't be silent. The call came at 0300. For contacts. Fast. Silent. Slipping into eastern Utah airspace. I was already in my flight suit before the alarm finished buzzing. No preamble. No escort. Just a green light from Rowan and a quiet nod from the tower chief. They all knew what this was now. Not a mission, but a reckoning. I launched under cover of low cloud, climbing slow through the darkness like I didn't want to wake the sky. At 29,000 feet, I caught them. 4 black silhouettes, cruising above the ridgeline with the grace of wolves on the hunt. No lights. No ID. Just presence. I leveled out a mile back. Switched to the open frequency. This is Captain Alex Vega. Call sign Wildcard. Identify. Nothing. Then Theo. You finally came alone. I've always been alone up here, I said. Another jet slid closer, just off my wing. Not Durant. A woman's voice crackled in. We flew together once. I was covered during the Andean extraction. You remember? It took me a second. Then I did. Captain Ren Ortega. Killed in an avalanche crash. At least, that's what they'd told us. So that made 2 ghosts tonight. Theo's voice returned. We're not your enemy, Alex. We're your reflection. You've always known this. No, I said. I knew you. That was before you started risking civilians to make a point. It's the only way they'll listen, he said. I pushed forward. Close enough now to see his canopy. I could just barely make out his helmet, silver streaks across matte black. Custom. Of course. This ends now, I told him. You crossed the line again. They'll send more than just me. We're counting on that, he said quietly. Because this fight isn't about firepower. It's about narrative. I hesitated. They'll erase you, I said. For good this time. Theo turned his jet slightly, exposing the old Zulu-Echo symbol again. They already did. And just like that, the formation scattered. Silent. Clean. For black jets splitting across the stars like smoke breaking apart. I could have followed. But I didn't. Because this wasn't a dogfight anymore. It was a message. They weren't ghosts. They were a mirror held up to a system that forgot who it used to be. The official report didn't mention the formation, or the tail marks, or the fact that 3 pilots once listed as Kia had flown within 200 yards of my cockpit. No, the file was 4 paragraphs of sanitized airspace breach protocol and an unconfirmed sighting of experimental craft. Classic. Rowan didn't say much when I handed him my flight recorder. Just stared out the window and said, "We'll log it." Quietly. That was the end of it. Publicly, at least. But the next day, something strange happened. I was asked to speak at the Flight Academy in Colorado Springs again. Not as a guest. As a mentor. In the front row sat 24 cadets, fresh out of primary. Flight suits crisp, eyes bright, egos still forming. Behind them, Lieutenant Morrison. The same one who once called me Grandma playing Top Gun. He gave me a nod that meant something now. I stood before the room, same as I had months ago, but this time my voice carried something different. Not legacy. Not legend. Warning. Call signs, I said, aren't earned in calm skies. They're carved in moments when you're the only one left flying straight. A hand shot up, a young cadet, sharp-eyed. Ma'am, what happens if the system forgets the people who carve those names? I paused, then smiled, faintly. Then we reminded. I talked for 30 minutes. About instinct. About betrayal. About how the line between relic and rebel sometimes lives in the cockpit, not the chain of command. And how some of the best pilots I ever knew had disappeared, not into the ground, but into history's blind spot. Afterward, Morrison approached me. Quietly. They're still out there, aren't they? He asked. The sky remembers, I said. Even if the brass pretends not to. He hesitated. Would you go back? If they asked? They won't ask, I said. But if they did? I'd only go back to finish it. Later that evening, I walked the hangar alone. The Delphin sat under a tarp, still warm from the afternoon run. I ran a hand over the wing and said nothing. No speech. No goodbye. Just one sentence, to no one in particular. Legends don't live forever. But the ones who fly like they do, leave something behind. The tower cleared me for takeoff 5 minutes later. No destination filed. Just a name. Wildcard. I lifted into the fading light, not chasing ghosts this time, but watching over them. Because somebody had to remember the ones who flew too well to fit back into the world. And I was just old enough, and just stubborn enough, to be that somebody. The sky stretched out ahead like an open secret. And somewhere out there, the rest of Zulu-Echo waited. Not for war, but for a time when the world might finally ask why the best pilots it ever had disappeared. Until then, I fly. Because legends may fade, but the sky never forgets.